G'day legends! Well, we're out here at Gembrook today. Beautiful weather. It's coming into winter and it's been pretty poor lately, so it's nice to actually have a sunny day. Figured we'd come out and do a bit of a video on the bikes. We've had a few questions asking what we've done to them all and modifications and all the different things that go into it to ride them the way we do. So we figured, why not come out and put our ugly mugs in front of the camera and tell you what we've done. All right, to start off, there's so many things that we go through, but I guess we should probably start off with how we got them, how long we've had them, what mods they came with when we got them off the shop floor. So we bought them November last year. We both bought them at exactly the same time. Both of the bikes are exactly the same age. They actually have coinciding number plates. They're off by one letter, which is pretty cool. It was a pretty cool experience for me and my brother to be able to go and buy them together. We actually took them straight off the showroom floor out into Nearham. People know Nearham who might ride in Victoria. Nearham's a pretty cool place to go ride. Actually featured in one of our last videos, but went out to Nearham, did some single tracks and fell in love with the bike straight away from there. When we got them off the floor, all they had really were bark busters. In our opinion, bark busters are one of the most important mods you can have. The amount of money you'll save in brake levers and clutch levers by having bark busters is far outweighs the cost of the bark busters themselves. Having a good quality bark buster too with the actual metal loops as opposed to just the factory plastic ones. I'm sure you'll probably get away with the plastic ones for a little bit if you're not going too hard, but if you like throwing your bike down the track like we do, I'd advise getting yourself some decent bark busters. The other mod that we had done before we even had them delivered was air filters. We both run the Unifilter foam air filter and snorkel socks. Yes, we do still run our snorkels. It seems to be fairly popular with these bikes that people like to pull the snorkels off them, but in our mind, it's a pretty good idea to keep them on, especially if you plan on doing river crossings and stuff like that. It just gets the intake for the airbox back nice and far, and it's not down low where it would be if you didn't have the snorkels on there. So in our mind, we like having the snorkels on there, and the snorkel pre-filter socks seem to do a really good job. We've cleaned them a few times now from our rides and they always end up filthy, but the main filter is always spotless. So that's what we got them with, and that's how they came when we bought them. From there, I guess the next mod that we did after that, we had a fairly big ride that we did with a heap of boys on enduro bikes. It was, for some reason, even though at the end of the year, absolutely pegging down with rain. It was a horrible weekend to go for a ride, especially on brand new big bikes, but we then fitted some decent tyres. We started off with the Midas Enduro Trail XTs. Matty's behind the camera. He's helping me out there. The Enduro Trail XT Pluses, I think they were, in just the normal tread. I know there's two different kinds, so we're still running them on the front currently, and do really like them as a front tyre. They can get a little bit slippy depending on what you're riding, but as far as a good on-road, good off-road, they're a great tyre on the front. We did find with the rear tyres, their lateral traction left a little bit to be desired. We ended up blowing through those tyres, well, the rear tyre in 2,500 K. So we didn't get as long out of them as we thought we did, but it probably doesn't help that we're constantly twisting that right wrist and just destroying rear tyres, which is to be expected on something that weighs this amount and puts out this kind of power, I guess. We now both run the Motos Desert HT, which obviously is down a little bit now. I think we've got about 1,500 Ks on them so far, and we're really enjoying the Desert HT. We find that it hooks up a bit better than what we felt like the Midas did. Better lateral traction. I think that just comes down to the way that the tread pattern's a bit more staggered than what the Midas was. The Midas is more of a bar tread than what these are. These sort of almost look a bit more like a motocross tyre as opposed to an enduro sort of adventure tyre. But yeah, we're finding the Motos a lot better. We've heard mixed opinions on that. A few people don't really like them. The one thing I will say about the Motos compared to the Midas is it is a lot louder on road, but with the way that we ride these things, we're not too concerned with noise on road. We're sort of more concerned with it actually getting traction when we're off road. We don't do a whole lot of road Ks, and if it is, it's a means to an end. We're just trying to get out to the good tracks, to go out and ride the good stuff.
How do you find the rear tyre on wet bitumen roads?
Yeah, it's not the greatest. I definitely wouldn't advise it if you're someone who enjoys riding tarmac more than dirt, especially in all weather. Both of us have found that if it's wet on the road, you need to keep it as upright as possible and try not to twist the wrist too much, to twist the wrist. But yeah, no, they're not the greatest when it comes to wet weather on tarmac, but they do definitely perform off-road better than what we feel like the Midas did. So that's a big plus for the Motos. Another mod that we did fairly early on was the ABS guard. So we made up a little guard just to cover up the ABS sensor. We heard some horror stories of the ABS sensors getting destroyed by sticks and whatever else, and then the bike not wanting to run. So we thought that's a fairly exposed part. Why not make a little guard? And I guess that probably segues perfectly into the mods of the bike. It might be known to some people, but it's probably not to other. I actually run a little fabrication business. I don't really specialise in this kind of stuff. I do more car stuff, automotive, performance, street, drag, strip, hot rods, that kind of thing. But obviously doing that, it allows me to then be able to knock up our own little modifications for the bike the way we see fit, which is nice. And then that leads probably perfectly into the exhausts.
Righto, mate. I might get you to give me a bit of a rundown on the build of the exhaust, how many hours went into it, what it's made out of,
Yep.
The difference between yours and mine, I suppose. We've got two different styles.
So they're fairly similar in the respect that they're made from the same diameter material as far as link pipe. So we've done a header back. Rally style, I guess you would call it. We definitely preferred this sort of style compared to how they usually are, where they come up in between the swing arm and the shock. A few different reasons. We like the look of it. We like that sort of more Dakar rally style exhaust, I guess. And it also pulls the exhaust away from the shock, which in our minds is never a bad thing, I guess. Being able to keep the heat away from the shock and not cook your shock oil has always got to be a bonus. It also means that we've got something that nobody else has, which is pretty cool, I guess, being able to have something unique to what's out there. There's a lot of other exhausts that are now available off the shelf, but yeah, to be able to have something that's unique to us is pretty cool. They are a combination of different things. They're the mid pipe or link pipe is a stainless, 304 stainless, 1.6mm wall, which is also in itself a little bit different to usually what's on the market. A lot of the stuff you'll find is usually a bit thinner, usually 1 to 1.2mm wall thickness. So even just that in itself, having 1.6mm wall thickness on the link pipe makes it a bit more hardy. Means it can take the hits, and it's not going to get you into too much strife. You're not going to squish it on logs or anything like that. So for the header back, it obviously weaves its way between the foot peg and the swing arm. We've made up some little heat guards for them. We didn't originally have the heat guards, and found that we'd touch our boot on them every now and then, which would then melt the boot, which is probably not ideal. It's not really what you want. You'd want to try and protect your boots, especially when they're worth a bit. But yeah, having the link pipe there is good for heat, gets it out of the way, looks good, and good clearance on the swing arm and everything like that. It comes back into a titanium can. The titanium is 1.2mm wall thickness, which it's always going to cop a bit of a beating if you're laying down a 200 kilo bike onto the pipe, but it seems to be holding up fairly well. Mine uses more of a cone style end cap, which are a hand-formed 1.2 possibly, or 0.9. I can't actually remember exactly what it is, but they're a hand-formed end cone, which then use a perforated stainless pipe inside, which use two different types of packing. We use like a loose packing and a mat. Obviously they're all riveted together, so fully serviceable. We can pull them apart, change the matting once it starts to blow the matting out of them. It is very much
It's custom built to the bike, isn't it?
Custom made to the bike, and it works in conjunction with our pannier racks and our rear rack. I've had a few questions about the exhaust and people wanting the exhausts. Unfortunately, it's not something I'm really willing to offer just because of the hours that went into building them. I can't offer them at a competitive price to anything that's out there on the market. I'd say just between mine and Matt's pipes, there'd be, it'd have to be 100+ hours in the two pipes. To some people, they'd probably see that as a bit silly to spend that much time building some exhausts, but when you can do it yourself, there's sort of no reason not to. It's pretty cool to be able to have something on your bike that you've made yourself, especially when you can sort of make it to a half decent level and it looked pretty cool. So they are connected to our pannier racks. The pannier racks are a 16mm solid aluminium bar, so they take a fair beating, which has been pretty nice because we've definitely tested them. Connected to the pipe via some CNC machined 6061 aluminium mounts. So obviously that's all done in-house, all done by myself, which has been pretty cool to be able to do. Yeah, designed them up with the computer, machined them out on the CNC, and then set them up to each bike. They're definitely set up in a custom way that we've put the pipe on, put the pannier racks on, and then made a custom length mount to suit. You'll notice the difference between mine and Matt's is his is a little bit shorter. He wanted a little bit more angle on his pipe. So I guess this probably leads into talking about Matt's pipe. Matt's definitely a big fan of the old school stain tune style exhausts. And you can obviously see in the tip's a little bit different. The end caps of both of them a little bit different, but that's about the only way that the two bikes differ. His just has different end caps to mine, but as far as length and everything, they're basically exactly the same. I guess to round out the back end of the bikes, obviously I've explained that we've got the custom pannier racks. They are, yeah, as I said, a solid 16mm aluminium rack. And then we've also built our own little gear racks on the back there. We did these just to give ourselves a little bit more room over the standard rack, and then also a few more options as to tie down points and stuff. So we can tie it down through all the various little loop straps that we've made, and they're a little bit solid and probably a little bit lighter than what the factory ones are. The factory ones are plastic and steel. So by then changing it to aluminium, we save a little bit of weight there. The reason our pannier racks are the way that they are, as opposed to a lot of the other stuff that's on the market, we run the angled soft panniers. Currently, we're both running the Rhino walks, which for the money, you can't complain with them. The only thing we've really found is they don't like being crashed on, which is really no fault of the pannier bag itself. You can't expect a cheap pannier bag to hold up to being thrown down the track several times. So we've both had a few little issues with putting some tears in them and tearing some straps off, but like I said, it's no fault of the bag. You can't really expect too much out of them. So yeah, we just wanted something that looked good when the bag wasn't on as well. Sort of went for the MX bike sort of side plate style, and we think they look pretty cool on the bikes when we don't have them on. It also doubles up as the exhaust mount. And that's why we built them the way we did.
And they're uniform too, because of the exhaust that we've put on. Ben didn't like the idea of, it's a bit hard to see, but didn't like the idea of with the ones you can buy off AliExpress or wherever you get them from, that the right hand side one hangs out way past the exhaust. So
having them symmetrical is definitely, as far as visuals go, we both think it just looks better to have them symmetrical as opposed to having one hang out. It also helps too when you're riding the tracks to know that both of your bags are no wider than what your handlebars are. That was the only thing and another thing that we found, that having them asymmetrical with the exhaust side sticking out further to clear the factory exhaust, is then your bag would stick out further than what your bars do. We like to put them between the trees and the tight stuff and all the rest of it. So having them so we know that they're no wider than what our handlebars is definitely a big advantage for us. We've also done little tail tidies. So that was another thing that obviously I've made up. cut out on the CNC. So just being able to minimise what's going on at the back end of the bike, a little bit of weight savings, not a whole heap, but being able to minimise that, and it just retains all the factory indicators and reflectors and stuff like that to keep it legal.
And looks lots better.
And looks a heap better. Just tidies the back end of the bike up nicely, in our opinion. So yeah, that's probably about that as far as modifications on the back of the bike. What else?
You want to come around to the front and show us the latest
Sure.
creation?
So we've just, if you've watched our episodes, especially our high country trip, you'll know that we had a bit of an incident with Maddie's radiator. I flicked up a bloody great big rock that cleaned up Maddie's radiator, and we put a big hole in one of his tubes. So it only seemed appropriate that coming back from that it was time to make up a decent radiator shroud for him. So yet another little thing that I've designed up in the computer, cut out in the CNC. This is actually possibly something that I'm looking to offer if people want to buy one. They will come as shown. It's just raw aluminium that's then been sanded. So if you want to paint it or you want to get it powder coated, you can do that yourself. It's not really something that I would offer with powder coating or anything, because it's sort of not really cost effective for me to do it. I'd need to do it in a large bunch, and I'm sort of not looking to produce them in large. It's more so if, you know, any of the viewers want one and they're happy to paint it up themselves. Look, you can leave it raw aluminium if you like, it's up to you, but that's something that we might look at offering. Obviously, we've just put them on, so they're in the testing phase at the moment. So we just need to make sure they've got enough airflow, provide enough clearance and all the rest of it. But that's the latest little mod. I guess one of the other things that we will look at doing down the track is bash plates. The stock ones are doing all right for now. We haven't really had too many issues with them. As you can see though, I guess the bikes have seen a bit of time on the ground. We're not scared to throw them down the track, albeit accidentally, but it definitely happens, and the stock guards have held up fairly well. We're obviously not slamming them into logs or anything like that. We're fairly mindful on how hard we go on them, but yeah, looking at some kind of bash plate in the future with some aluminium wings, bringing the bash plate back further than what the stock ones are, because obviously it mounts to the motor. I'm not a huge fan of that. I would like to mount it to the frame as opposed to having it mounted to the motor, just to try and avoid any damage to the actual engine cases, which could then be pretty costly and time consuming to try and fix. So yeah, bash plates in the future will be something that we'll look into. We both run a GPS. It makes it nice. We both actually run different mapping programs, so it's nice to then be able to have two different programs that then both have their advantages and disadvantages, I guess. So being able to have both is pretty cool. Sometimes mine will show a track that Maddie's doesn't, or shows a certain feature. Maddie's are a little bit better topographically, having all the topo lines and stuff like that. And then sometimes mine are a bit clearer when it comes to track names and stuff like that. So as far as mine goes, it's just a cheaper Android run Alibaba setup. It's a 6-inch. I would have preferred to originally run it vertical, but couldn't get my maps to turn vertical. So another little CNC special made up a nice little bracket for it that then mounts off the dash itself and not the screen. This way it doesn't go up and down with the screen, it doesn't flop around on the screen. It actually mounts down behind the dash onto a couple of bolts that are down behind there. And then I've just picked up the power from, I think, what is the factory grip warmer power. We're not going to run grip warmers. We just sort of deal with the pain of cold fingers, I guess. But yeah, it runs off that, and it's been really good. Being an Android run system, I can load up any maps that I want. Usually I run the OSM Android maps. I actually just downloaded the DMD2 maps, so we're trialing the DMD2s at the moment, which seem to be pretty good maps. So yeah, we'll definitely have a play around with that. And then I guess the last mod for mine is just this little bracket for the handlebar bag. It sort of just stops the handlebar bag from sagging down. You can see here it's still got nice clearance on the tank, so then it doesn't sag down and rub on the tank, and then it's got something pretty substantial to strap to. So that's been a pretty good addition. Having the handlebar bag there is actually really handy. It means if we need to charge the cameras or phones or anything like that, we can run the cable from the factory USB plug into the bag, and then it's sort of out of the way, not on you or anything like that, and then your cables aren't getting caught up or anything on the tracks. Mods going forward, there's not a whole lot more. Obviously, I mentioned the bash plate. Having a decent bash plate on it wouldn't be a bad thing. And then probably folding mirrors at some stage. We've got pretty lucky with them. Mirrors are fairly busted up. I've thrown it down the track. This one's a little bit bent, but until we break those ones, I guess, we'll probably just leave the stock mirrors on it and replace them as we need to. So I will hand it over to Matt now, and he can explain what we've done the suspension with suspension, because he's a bit more of a guru when it comes to setting that kind of stuff up than what I am. So,
G'day legends, Matty here. I was just going to give you a quick rundown of sort of what we've done to these two bikes as far as suspension setup goes. This by no means is a video to tell you how to set up your suspension. This is just what we've done that sort of suits our style of riding, and just a little bit of an insight to what we've done to make them feel a little bit better for the way we ride. As far as the back suspension goes, we've found that it was quite soft in the back end, even straight off the shop floor. And then once you put all your gear bags on, it would sort of squat in the back end a little bit. So as far as preload goes, we've put a whole turn of preload into the rear shock, and we've also slowed the rebound down a little bit, because once you wind preload into the rear shock, it makes it more springy. So to counteract that, you need to slow your rebound down a little bit to stop it sort of trying to buck you out of the cockpit. We've played around, just depending on the tracks you're riding. You can adjust your clickers with your compression just a little bit as well. But again, that all comes down to personal preference. We've kept the full turn of preload on the rear shock. It doesn't matter whether we're riding with the gear on or gear off. With the gear off, it just means we can push the bikes that little bit harder, and it's not going to wallow out in all the water bars, all that sort of stuff. And then we come up to the front. We've had a little bit of drama with fork seals. We both blew our fork seals within sort of 2,000 Ks. The front forks are a little bit sort of, if you're just going to get the bike and you're going to go out and you're going to just do your average sort of riding, the stock suspension is more than capable of doing what you need it to do. I think once you start pushing them a little bit, the front forks are sort of left to be a little bit desired. That may be something that Ben and I look at in the future, is sort of maybe upgrading internals or doing something with that. But as far as still running the stock front forks, we've adjusted the oil level. So we've put a bit more oil in the front forks just to try and help with a little bit of bottoming resistance, I suppose. A little bit more fluid in there stops you sort of blowing through the stroke as much as what it would as if it was standard. We've put half a turn of preload into the front forks just to stiffen the front forks up just that little bit. So that coincided with the raised oil level is night and day difference to standard. And then again, obviously, when you're putting preload on the spring, you just need to adjust your clickers a little bit. So a little bit of compression, and you can probably speed your rebound up a little bit in the front, because you want your front wheel staying on the ground all the time. If your rebound's too slow in the front, you'll find it'll get wallowy, and then your steering won't be as direct as you need it to be. One of the other things we did, I didn't think they were too bad when we rode out of the shops, but Ben hated them as soon as we got onto the soon as we got onto the blacktop. The standard grips are as hard as concrete. So we heard mixed reviews that they weren't able to be changed. You couldn't do it. Both Ben and I, being as pig-headed as we are sometimes, we thought, well, we've got nothing to lose. So as far as changing grips, clutch side, easy. Cut it off, glue a new one on, clutch side is done. On the accelerator side, the throttle tube has got little plastic humps in it, I suppose you would say, just to help hold that really hard grip on there. All we've done is just with a sharp Stanley blade, just got rid of those humps, otherwise you feel them through the soft grip. And then we've just had to modify just a little bit where the grip goes right up to the end of the throttle tube there. But motocross grips can definitely be put on these bikes. As far as we're concerned, it makes the ride a heck of a lot more comfier. Your hands don't get as sore, and it's just better all round. Especially if you're just commuting around town, the standard grips will be fine. The only setback with that is like Ben was saying earlier, you can't run heated grips, I suppose, because the heated grips are an aftermarket thing. But we just tough it out anyway because we're a bit silly and we just put up with it. So yeah, that you can, motocross grips can definitely be put on these bikes. Like I said, you just need to just do a few modifications to your throttle tube and you've got nice comfortable grips that you aren't going to tire your hands out.
Means you can also tailor it to yourself. I know for myself, I like a grip that doesn't have any waffle, whereas Matt probably prefers a grip with the waffle on it. So just being able to choose what kind of grip you want as far as density and how hard or soft they are is definitely, in our opinion, a pretty big win. So yeah, definitely possible. But yeah, I guess that's another thing to touch on is there's a few things that people like to complain about with these bikes. Wind buffeting is probably one of the most commonly discussed things. In our head, they're an off-road bike. Like, if you want something that's not going to wind buffet, go and buy a touring bike. Like, yeah, that's, as I said, our opinion. That's how we see it. But these are definitely tailored towards being an off-road bike. So the smaller things like wind buffeting and stuff, it's sure they might buffet a little bit when you're doing 110 down the blacktop, but for us, you know, the suspension, the low slung tanks, the screen actually being a little bit smaller so it doesn't get in the way whilst you're off-road is definitely a plus in our minds. So, all right, legends. Well, that will conclude our little video on how we've set up our bikes. As we said a few times, I think this is purely just a video on how we've set up our bikes for the way we like to ride them. We probably ride them a little bit differently to what a lot of the other punters out there ride them. We sort of treat them like dirt bikes and definitely enjoy riding them like that. Being able to throw a big bike around the bushes is a hell of a lot of fun. It's definitely a hell of a lot harder than it is on a 100 kilo enduro bike, but I think that's half of the reward of riding these things is to be able to throw a big bike around. Feels pretty cool. So I guess if anyone's got any questions, throw them down in the comments. I always try and answer every comment or give you a reply. So yeah, on that note, Matty,
Keep them upright and twist it on. Get
Keep
out there
them upright.
get out there and have fun. They're not built to be sitting in the shed. So go out and go exploring and find some places and find some fellow enthusiasts to go and make some memories with. Go out and get it done. Get it done. As Matty said, just get out there and ride it. Enjoy the bike and have fun on it. So, on that note, woo! Enjoy, boys. Thank you. Hello. Megan!